Hey, very good morning to my friends and family from Brumley Baptist Church. Hard to believe, but the end of July is in sight here. This is our next to last Sunday in July, being a 5-Sunday month. And we're diving into 2 Kings for the first time. 2 Kings chapter 5, verses 1 through 14. And the title for all of our lessons in 2 Kings, are phrased the same: God and then blank. God heals, God provides, God gives, something to that effect, an adjective of something that God does every time. And in this first one is God heals. I would imagine all of you at some point have been to the doctor. And I would also imagine, since none of us are very patients, that we have ignored some advice the doctor has given us at some point. You know, when God tells the people, this is what I want you to do, I want you to follow this command. When we don't follow that command, we open ourselves up to trouble. We're going to read a story today about a man named Naaman, and Naaman is going to be a guy who is going to explicitly follow the commands of God. He's going to do what God tells him to do. And that's a good thing for him and for the people, for Elisha, who is the prophet of God involved in this story, for everyone adjacent to the story. Nathan's obedience is going to gain a lot of traction for everybody involved. 2 Kings chapter 5 and the first 14 verses, as you can see there on your screen. Three sections today. Let's start with desperate. 1 Kings 5:1. Naaman, commander of the army for the king of Aram, was a man important to his master and highly regarded through him. The Lord had given victory to Aram. So he has a good reputation because through him, God had given victory to his troops. The man was a valiant warrior, but he had a skin disease. Aram had gone on raids and brought back from the land of Israel a young girl who served Naaman's wife. She said to her mistress, "If only my master were with the prophet who is in Samaria, he would cure him of his skin disease." So Naaman went and told his master what the girl from the land of Israel had said. Therefore the king of Aram said, "Go, and I will send a letter with you to the king of Israel." So he went and took with him 750 pounds of silver, 150 pounds of gold, and 10 sets of clothing. He brought the letter to the king of Israel, and it read, "When this letter comes to you, note that I have sent you my servant Naaman for you to cure him of his skin disease." Naaman is very valuable. And so that's why this king is so desperate here. And that's why we get this title for this first section. We move from 1 Kings to 2 Kings, from Elijah to Elisha. Elijah departs the story, and Elisha becomes kind of the main character here. Now, Naaman is obviously the main character in this story. He's going to cross paths with Elijah. Naaman, again, the text tells us exactly why he's so valuable. He's a great military leader, and he has brought victory to Aram's people. But not just him. Look in verse 1. The Lord through him had given victory to Aram. But at some point, he has contracted a skin disease. Now, whether this is leprosy, whether what it is, a lot of translations render this as leprosy instead of just a skin disease. If you hear of leprosy today, it's called Hansen's disease. It is a bacterial infection that does what leprosy does. It basically just eats the skin, causes nerve damage, skin lesions, all that sort of thing. You know from your Bible study that anyone who had leprosy was unclean. They could not go in the temple. They couldn't serve the Lord. They were very contagious. The crowds would part when someone with leprosy would just walk through shouting, "Unclean, unclean, unclean." If you touch someone with leprosy, you then were unclean, because more than likely you were going to contract, leprosy yourself. So this is obviously a big deal. Eventually, we get this girl who becomes Naaman's wife. She is from Israel, and so she knows of Elijah and Elisha and God's power through them. And so she tells the king, "Hey, if he could go here, then I know a man that has the power of God that could fix this." And so he sends him a bounty, a payment, basically a copay, if you would, for a doctor visit. 750 pounds of silver, 150 pounds of gold, and 10 sets of clothing. It's very interesting to me how expensive clothing is compared to these other things. 10 sets is considered on the same as 150 pounds of gold or 700 plus pounds of silver. So an incredible gift that he gives. And this shows you how valuable Naaman was. He really wanted him healed. He wanted him to be better. He was certainly desperate. So when the king of Israel read the letter, he tore his clothes and said, "Am I God, killing and giving life? This man expects me to cure a man of his skin disease. Recognize that he is only picking a fight with me." When Elisha, the man of God, heard that the king of Israel had torn his clothes, he sent a message to the king, "Why have you torn your clothes? Have him come to me, and he will know there is a prophet in Israel." So Naaman came with the horses and chariots and stood at the door of Elisha's house. Then Elisha sent him a messenger who said, "Go wash 7 times in the Jordan, and your skin will be restored, and you will be clean." When the king gets this letter, he tears his clothes. When you tear your clothes, it's an extreme action. You're very angry, you're very sad, you're very upset. Your mourning would often include tearing and rending of the garments and things like that. It's to show everyone around you how upset you are. So he tears his clothes. He thought that this was a trap, that this was some sort of political maneuver, that the king of Aram was trying to lull him into a friendship or a false sense of security so that then he could attack him or something like that. He said, "I'm a king. I don't do this." And again, remember, the wife of Naaman had known about Elisha, not the king, but the king of Aram and the king here deal with each other. Elisha is kind of on the periphery until he hears about this. So of course the king doesn't have this power. Elisha does. Why? The text tells us, because he is a man of God and he is a prophet of God. And so that's why he becomes central to the story. So when he hears about it, he says, "Send him to me and I'll take care of it." And then notice in verse 10, these are the weirdest directions ever. "Go wash 7 times in the Jordan, and your skin will be restored to you, and you will be clean." Literally, just go dip yourself in the Jordan River 7 times. Like, really? That's it? That's all I've got to do is just go get in the river and kind of go up and down 7 times? It doesn't make any sense. Why would I do something like this? Well, Naaman has the same response, but Naaman got angry and left, saying, "I was telling myself, he will surely come out, stand and call on the name of the Lord his God, wave his hand over the place and cure the skin disease. Aren't Abana and Pharpar, the rivers of Damascus, better than all the waters of Israel? Couldn't I wash in them and be clean?" So he turned and left in a rage. Naaman is a powerful man, and he expects to be shown honor. He expects to be taken very seriously. And when he gets this message to go wash in the Jordan, he feels like he's been made a fool of. Doesn't Elisha know who I am? I'm an important army general. If you wanted me to wash in a river, I had rivers at home that are cleaner and deeper and nicer than these rivers, this Jordan River. Why didn't I do that? He is very disappointed. He's angry. He's upset, and he leaves. He leaves in a huff, in a rage. He just walks away and says, "No, if bobbing in the river is what I need to do, I could have done that at home. I don't need this game, this garbage, this mess. I'm not going to do it." And so he leaves. But his servants approached him and said to him, "My father, if the prophet had told you to do some great thing, would you not have done it? How much more should you do it when he tells you, wash and be clean?" So Naaman went down and dipped himself in the Jordan 7 times, according to the command of the man of God. His skin was restored, became like the skin of a small boy, and he was clean. I love verse 13 of 2 Kings 5. It said, "If he had told you to do something great, you would have done it. Why won't you do something small?" It's a great metaphor for all of our lives when it comes to walking with the Lord. And you go do a big thing. Why won't you do a little thing? You'll go on a big mission trip across the world and share the gospel with lots of people, which is great. But why won't you share your gospel with your neighbor or your spouse or your family member? We want to do great things from the Lord, but many times we forget that great things from the Lord are small things in the eyes of man. And so I tell him, "Well, if you would do that, why won't you do this?" And he kind of comes to himself and says, "Oh, okay." And of course he does it. He's obedient. And as soon as obedience meets command, healing takes place. And the same can be said of us. When we are obedient to what God calls us to do, healing and direction always follow right behind. Beautiful picture of Naaman falling to the point of obedience. He's delivered because of what he does. God uses relationships to bring about his purpose. See, that this woman who comes from Israel to come be Naaman's wife, if she never comes, Naaman's never healed. And if Naaman's never healed, maybe he doesn't do all the things that he does. And if he doesn't do all the things that he does, then, all of history, biblical history, gets changed. Look around, those people that you're in relationship with, both from your side and from their side. God could be wanting to do something through those relationships. Believers can view challenges as divine opportunities to demonstrate God's character. In just about another week and a half, I'm going to have students sitting in my classroom again, and I have to believe that each one of those students is there for a reason. And some of those students are going to bring challenges. But those challenges are precisely what God wants to use to mold me and to mold them into what he wants us to be. Chance for me to show the character of God. What's the biggest hindrance to that? It's easy. It's pride. Again, Naaman, who is this guy telling me to go wash in the river? Does he not know who I am? I'm big. I'm important. I'm a big general. He ought to come out here and have fanfare. And no, Naaman, just go dip in the river. Nobody watching, nobody seeing. I just need you to be obedient to this small thing. Healing always awaits those who obediently follow God's direction. Are we willing to follow God's direction? If so, healing will be provided for us as well. Speaking of provided, from chapter 7 next week, God provides, chapter 7, verses 1 through 15. Elisha will be part of our story again next week. Again, God healing people, God providing exactly what we need. So I hope that you can join us for that then as we continue through our summer series. Again, you can notice the last few weeks here, we're going to be in 2 Kings for a while. So if you need something to read, go read through that great book in the Old Testament. Familiarize yourself with some of those stories that we'll be looking at over the next few weeks. As always, we would love to have you Wednesday nights at 6 p.m., Sunday mornings at 10 a.m. live together at Brumley Baptist Church. If you can't be with us then, you can always be with us right here online. Have a good and godly day. And until I talk to you again, go serve your King.